Okay, so it's not mock draft Monday, but I'm going to make up for that in spades today. Michael Thompson of 12th Man Rising is going to join me. And first, we're going to do dueling mock drafts, comparing what it would look like if the Seahawks took a quarterback in the first round, specifically Michael Penix. The buzz will not go away. And when we don't, I do the one without a quarterback. We'll see which one you like best. And then just for the heck of it, we're going to do a live mock draft simulation where we trade off and alternate picks and see how good of a draft class we can come up with for your Seattle Seahawks. We've got tons of mock drafting ahead on this edition of Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't watched yet, check out my episode from yesterday with Emery Hunt of CBS Sports and the Football Game Plan Draft Guide. In my opinion, one of the best draft analysts out there. Played college football, has scouted for years, just crisscrosses the country, goes to all the all-star games, even the little ones that you haven't heard of, all the letters of the alphabet. And goes deeper in his draft guide than a lot of the guys out there. And as a result, his guide looks different. He doesn't just go with the consensus and the chalk. So check that out if you will. Also, hit that like button, the bell for notification of future episodes on YouTube, and subscribe to the channel. And if you prefer audio episodes, subscribe on whichever platform you prefer. And if you want to hear episodes that don't have any ads in them, you can subscribe. It's a low monthly fee on Spotify. It's less than $1 a month right now. I've had it there for a while. Going to keep it there for a little while, at least until I have something to offer you that's exclusive, which I will do at some point. So all the better reason to get in now. You can do that on Spotify. That link will be in the description. Or if you just want to support me or the show, you can buy me a coffee. I love my coffee, as you can see right here. Or a beer if it's the weekend. Those links will all be in the description. Let's get into it. This is a little bit of a lengthy one, but I know you all love mock drafts, and I know you have strong opinions about them too. And so I really want to hear from you what you think of what lies ahead. Let's get into it. Michael Thompson, welcome back to the show, and welcome officially to draft month. We're about 3 weeks out. How are you feeling about this class overall? And as you get closer to sort of identifying what you want the Seahawks to do or think they can do, how it matches up with what they need?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dan. Appreciate it. We're almost there. I'd say we're in the fourth quarter now before the draft gets going. And the first draft without Pete Carroll in what, 15 years?
Yeah, so
just about. It's crazy.
It's been a lot longer off season because we're
very, very bittersweet, but also this is exciting. This is a new era, a new opportunity and stuff. And I really am a big fan of this draft. I'm probably more on the positive side of it. I think a lot of people will tell you after day 2, you want to get out. I think Jim Nagy even said it himself, this draft drops off, and he's not wrong. It definitely does drop off with the COVID and the NIL. It's just changed the draft. The days of finding multiple starters from the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round on is very, very rare here on out. And the teams that do that are probably the teams that are going to set themselves up for Super Bowl runs, just getting that extra depth that isn't there anymore because NIL and this will be the last time of COVID and stuff. So, however, I really like this draft. I feel like this draft goes about 120 players deep of where I think I can get a guy that can start and really help our team year 1 and probably be an impact player by year 2. I think there is a ton of red chip type players that can make a few Pro Bowls, the kind of guys that are going to get you division titles and get you deep in the playoffs. And then I do think that there is a few more blue chip players than what we've seen the last couple of years, for sure. Is this the most deepest draft on blue chips ever? No. Is this the deepest class for quarterbacks that we've seen in a long time? Yes. Is this the deepest class for offensive tackles that we've seen in a long time? Yes. Is this an extremely underrated safety draft? Linebacker draft? Absolutely. There's even some really good defensive tackles. This is a deeper draft than the way people talk about it. It's just there's not as many household names or superstars once you get past the quarterbacks, and that's just because this is a unique draft where the quarterbacks, the names of them are so household names that they're just kind of really taking over the way everyone feels about the draft after them because they're going to dominate the first half of the draft.
Well, everything you said has to be music to Seahawk fans' ears, because all the position groups you just name checked are the ones that, I think we pretty much all agree they need the most, which is offensive line, linebacker, and potentially safety, because all of those position groups are full of, they either have holes, as is the case with the interior offensive line, or they're just full of guys on one-year deals or expiring contracts. So here's what we're going to do today. We've been talking about this for a long time, and the buzz just won't go away about potentially Michael Penix, right? Even after the Sam Howell trade, which I thought kind of would have quashed it, it won't go away. And every time you think it's going to, it picks up steam. Colin Cowherd comes out the other day in his mock draft and has Seattle moving up to get Penix. And in the past, he hasn't always been right, but in the past, I think he was a little more connected to our organization than now. I think he had some ties to Mark Rogers and Russell's camp. But the point being that I kind of wanted to do one last big deep dive into this hypothetical. And then, unless anything changes on the exterior, let's put this one to bed for a few weeks and look at it both ways, sort of a point counterpoint, or a pro and con. And so what I tasked you with is putting together the best draft that you liked, that you could put together with the Seahawks taking Michael Penix, to show, okay, can we do this? Can we kind of layer our quarterback room, maybe set it up so that between Howell and Penix, there are no guarantees in the NFL, but we're almost guaranteeing that we have a shot at a franchise guy being in the room moving forward. And then can we still check some boxes later on? And then I do a draft where I ignore quarterback. And then we're going to compare and get the viewers' opinions on that and have them kind of rate which one they like better. And then just for fun at the end, we're just going to go through a live simulation together and alternate picks and see what we come up with there. We're going to have some mock draft fun today on Mock Draft Monday. We're recording this on Mock Draft Monday. It won't show up until Tuesday, but it still counts. So let's go to your draft. Before I do that, did you have any unique challenges, frustrations? How many attempts did it take for you to get the one that you wanted?
Well, obviously, the way, I used PFN for my mock draft simulator, and it wasn't hard to get Michael Penix just because they have him ranked as a early second-round player. So that wasn't hard. What got really difficult was just sitting there for like 10 seconds and on the fastest way that the mock simulator goes, still waiting forever to get to pick 81. That is very, very painful. And I think that's kind of where we'll talk about it today. I think that's where you and I are at, is just the ability to let go of that. To you're basically asking to lose two players, potentially two trench players that could really help your team in the late first and maybe even in the second round for a quarterback, when you and I are both very pro Geno Smith. You and I both very much like what we've seen from Sam Howell. I think Joel Klatt definitely went on Seattle radio last week and kind of put his foot in the sand or on the ground of kind of what he views those two as. And I think that there is a large portion of the Seattle fan base that does feel that way. And there's also a large portion that feels the other way, that you can win. You got to take the offensive lineman. You got to just build around it and stuff. And so I'll be honest, I'm still very much conflicted. However, at every step of the way since Michael Penix stepped onto the field at Montlake, he has been arguably the best player in college football and one of the most impressive people to watch, one of the most impressive people to listen to. And he has dominated on the field. He dominated, it sounds like, at the combine. He dominated at the pro day. A lot of the concerns that have come up keep seeming not to be an issue. The injury stuff, everything checks out medically. He doesn't run very much. Well, we'll talk about that here in a second, but the guy can run. The guy can throw it. This is a guy that can lead a franchise. And so to see all that coming ahead, and you see like Rich Eisen posting that, he won't make it out of the first half of the first round. Charles Davis the other day, who's a very well-respected guy in the league, broadcaster for CBS, he has the Seahawks taking Michael Penix at 16. I think, though, there's a lot of momentum starting to build that if Seattle doesn't take Penix at 16, there is maybe not even a trade-up scenario, if we do love him, to come back and get him. He is rising that much up because of what he can do. And so for me, with the mock, I don't think that there's a better situation for him to come to a place than to where his offensive coordinator the last 2 years is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what really got me thinking about, like, He's dominating everything that he's been asked to do all year. He's only really struggled one time. I mean, there's been some stuff during the season, but like other than that Michigan game where he didn't have more than a few seconds to throw, he's been a rock star, a superstar, a guy that you could see as the face of the franchise.
No.
And there's just so much going on here. And then there's Grubb and stuff. And like the way Schneider and McDonald talk about Geno still, they can say he's the next Patrick Mahomes. I wouldn't believe them. I really wouldn't. I think they've been really coy about it and stuff. And so I think that there's a real 50-50 shot here that Michael Penix will be selected by the Seahawks at pick 16.
Well, this is what your draft looks like. You stick and pick at 16, as you said, for Michael Penix. And then where do you go from there?
Yeah, so after waiting about a half an hour on the simulator, which would be a few days, feels like for Seahawks fans, at pick 81, I know a lot of people want to hit the trenches, and we're going to hit the trenches. And this is where I believe this draft goes 120 deep. I get a guy that I have as a second round grade. I have my top safety in this draft after Tyler Nubin. So my number 2 safety in Cole Bishop. Cole Bishop is 6'2", 206, safety out of Utah. Just because he played at Utah, a lot of the comps will naturally go to, oh, he kind of plays like Eric Weddle. He actually does. He really does play a lot like Eric Weddle, who is a borderline, was an all-pro, Pro Bowl type player that could even maybe get some Hall of Fame votes one day. Eric Weddle was 5'11", 195. This dude runs faster than Eric Weddle, is bigger than him, and hits harder than him, has a higher vertical. What is this? 4.45 40-yard dash. You go pull up the tape. This guy was laying out dudes in the run defense and was also being able to run down any deep balls on a fantastic Utah Utes defense. This is a guy that can play free safety. This is a guy that can play strong safety. This is a guy that can go in the box and go deep on those, game deciding 20 to 40-yard passes down the field, and he can do the job. And really probably the most talented safety Seattle will have had. I love Quandre Diggs, but Cole is probably the most talented, physically talented safety that Seattle will have had since Earl Thomas. He's not Earl Thomas, so don't get that in your head. But this is a guy that immediately is a starter on this defense, and immediately probably is a plus player very, very quickly.
Well, and some fans, when you say that, might think, hey, wait a minute, we have Julian Love, we signed Rayshon Jenkins. Those are starters, but Mike McDonald has shown in his career as a defensive coordinator, he's basically going to use 3 safeties most of the time. I fully expect Devin Witherspoon to play almost exclusively, if not full time, on the outside under McDonald. And so that slot position that he used to really kind of give Kyle Hamilton's career a boost is one you're essentially going to use a third safety. And so I thought Bishop really helped himself at the combine, because what we saw at the combine was a lot of these top-rated safeties run slower than anyone expected. Cameron King,
they all underperformed.
Step back. Tyler Nubin wasn't as quick as people wanted him to be. And so is Bishop a guy that can play the slot too?
He's done it a little bit, probably wasn't asked too much because of the style of play that Utah does. But 100%, if you want to move Witherspoon and have him play a little bit of safety, you can do that. Or you want to, like you were talking about, the 3-headed monster. I just think about as well with McDonald, what he was able to do, like you're talking about with Hamilton. On the other side of it, also from a roster building standpoint, Julian Love's a free agent after this year.
Yeah.
Jenkins is probably a very quick, easy out after this year. I believe he has a 2-year deal. Whereas with Bishop, this is a guy that you can build around. We have what I believe are solid Band-Aids. I really do think Jenkins and Love is a nice combo. But you put Bishop in there and you run that 3-headed monster at safety, and you have Witherspoon, and you have what I'm hoping is an improved Tariq Woolen under McDonald. Like, that's a real dangerous 5 guys out there in which Love can play slot. Bishop can play slot. Jenkins, I don't know if he really can play all that much slot. I'm sure he could do a little bit. But for me, the big thing as well is I view Cole Bishop as a guy that I can put on a tight end. When's the last time we felt good going against a great tight end? I always feel like whenever we play the Niners, and Shanahan's, he's fantastic, and Kittle's really good. But, like, I just knew we're giving up a touchdown or 2, we're going to give up 80 to 100 yards to Kittle. When we would play, I'm trying to think of the the Chiefs. I would assume Kelsey's going to light us up. Any team that has a decent tight end, I just always feel like we always got cooked by them. Yeah. And I feel like Cole in a 3 safety scheme, you put him on those tight ends and just shut down that middle of the field. That's where I'm at. And I think he can do that from day one as a rookie.
Now, that pick coming as it does on day 2 to finish out day 2 for the Seahawks might make some fans nervous, sort of like last year when they hadn't addressed the trenches yet going into day 3. And so you had to go to sleep at night wondering, you know, when are they going to address that?
Yeah, I'm just leaning into my John Schneider. Making you guys sweat. No trench.
That's going to make some people nervous, but then you wake up on Saturday and you go Mason Smith. Big, tall, long, looks good coming off the bus, lots of traits, but a guy who has an injury history and then just hasn't quite lived up to, you know, the 5-star recruit billing that he had early in his career. What makes you think that he can be a guy that would fit into that defensive front that Mike Macdonald says he wants to build a wall with?
He is worth the risk because when he is healthy and with the proper coaching, he is a one-man wall. And he's not just a one-man wall that's going to shut down the running game. He's a one-man wall that is going to cause nightmares as a pass-rushing defensive tackle. High school, 5-star, top 20 prospect. His first year, he only played in 9 games, which, again, there's some risk involved here with Smith. 9 games, 4 starts, but in those 4 starts, 19 tackles, 5 tackles for a loss, and 4 sacks. Like, he was a massive disruptor for LSU, which was a big reason why the next 2 years they were hyped up so much as a potential college football playoff team. Next year, he gets hurt the season opening game in the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans against Florida State. We lose him for the whole year. The next year, he plays 12 games, but he gets suspended against Florida State in a game that they really had to win to really get their season off on the right foot. And he had a good year, but there was also NIL stuff, some suspensions, some autograph stuff, which 10 years ago would be like, oh my gosh, oh man, what a massive red flag. Well, now everyone's signing autographs and doing all this stuff. But last year he had 28 tackles in 12 games, 4.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2.5 sacks, and 2 pass breakups. So like kind of that thing where if you're looking at the trajectory, it's kind of going down, but also injuries and some weird stuff with the new coaching staff. I don't think he's been in the right environment. And at the end of the day, though, I can make a case he's the most physically gifted defensive tackle prospect in this class. There are concerns. There are headaches. 6'5", 306. I believe his relative athletic score was in the high 8s, low 9s, if I recall, which is really nice to see for someone that hasn't been on the field very much in the last 2 years and stuff. And so I'm excited to see what Mike Macdonald could do in our new defensive coordinator. I mispronounce his last name frequently, but from Dallas, what he could do. And you paired that with Leonard Williams, who is a veteran, a guy that's been around the block, like a guy that can really take him under his wings. I have it right here. He scored an 8.99 relative athletic score out of 10, which would rank 164th out of 1,620 defensive tackles.
Wow. Yeah.
In the last 17 years. And so this is a pick after what I believe is 2 guys that are going to be captains. I think Michael Penix and Cole Bishop would be captains. You're never going to have character concerns with those guys. Whereas as with Smith, this is one of those ones where it's like, hey, if we can get 85% of his potential out of him, we've got an impact player. And if we get more, we might have something super special. And at pick 102 in the 4th round, in my opinion, we're not necessarily, maybe I'm wrong, I hope I am, but we're not necessarily making, this pick doesn't define whether or not we're going to go to the Super Bowl this year or not. This is trying to see if we can find a red chip or maybe even stumble upon a blue chip at 102. He has blue chip potential. He just needs to get healthy, and he needs guidance, needs the right structure, and maybe Seattle's the perfect place for that for him.
It makes sense to me to take a shot at a guy with upside and traits on day 3 in this draft at that position because, A, there's a cliff after the 2nd round.
100%.
Interior defensive line's a weak position group in this class. And B, as you said, we're in a much different position up front on defense than we were a year ago at this time. We don't need a guy. And in fact, it's going to be tough for a guy to come in who's drafted this year at that position and really crack the rotation at all. So, you know, I like the idea of taking a guy with the future in mind. And much to some fans' chagrin, don't always draft for today. you got to draft for today and tomorrow. Speaking of that, a guy that actually might be for today, Zach Zinter, offensive guard, Michigan. Probably would have been a day 2 pick if he had come out a year ago, decides to come back along with all those other guys to take a shot at a national championship, which they accomplished.
He did, yep.
One of 18 Wolverines that went to the combine, even though he couldn't participate because he had that ugly broken leg in the Ohio State game late in the year. Everything sounds like he's going to be on track to be healthy and fully recover from that in time to play the beginning of the season. This seems like a steal at 118 because if he's 100% healthy, he's plug and play, right?
Yeah, 6'6", 309. I have here, you and I have talked about him since last year. We were hoping he was going to come out and stuff. I have literally written down here on my notes, the best natural guard in this draft. You know, there's guys that are super versatile. Obviously Barton, Powers Johnson, Fatanu. Those guys are going to be drafted a lot higher, but those guys do all sorts of different positions and stuff. Just as a general, like, natural guard in the mud, it's very smart to go to Ann Arbor and go get guards. You know, Seattle knows a thing or two about taking good guards out of Michigan. Got them to their first Super Bowl back in the day with Steve Hutchinson, and he's not Steve Hutchinson, but this is the kind of guy that you would plug in and play when he's ready, and you're set for the next 5 years at the offensive guard spot in that situation. Lance Zierlein on NFL.com, his comp for him is Graham Glasnow, and I think that's a good comp. We saw what he just recently did, and he just got paid in Detroit and was fantastic with them. But the leg thing is serious. It sounds like the way he talks about it is that it's fine. Everything that we've checked out, there's nothing ligament damage. It was literally just a gross looking bone fracture. And so I feel like this is a guy that can actually be ready to go with PUP. You know, after I think it's 6 games, I think this is a guy that you would start after that. I definitely do think that the interior offensive line is in desperate need of help. Schneider gets asked about it every time he talks. And he keeps saying we're looking at different avenues. I like the idea of going and getting a veteran just to have for camp. But I definitely think that there's a couple guys in this draft that we can get in day 2 or day 3 that can come in and beat like the Cody Whitehairs or some of these other guys that might get signed on. But that's why you bring those guys in and you let them compete and you see what happens. But Zinter, in my opinion, you take him, that's an immediate starter. And if he's healthy, he's probably a top 80 pick, and he might still be a top 80 pick. And so there's still some other guys out there, Illinois, Isaiah Adams, Texas A&M, has Robinson. Those are guys that will be around this area if Zinter is not. But if Zinter is there at 102 even or 118, I probably don't pass on him.
He certainly would feel comfortable looking to his right and seeing his old college teammate, Oluwatimi, starting next to him. And so combined, they were 2/5 of that Joe Moore award-winning line. Not a bad idea to take a Michigan offensive lineman from that Jim Harbaugh tree because, you know, they're going to have 5 guys drafted this year. I think it might be 6 on the offensive line. They're going to have guys drafted this year off that line that weren't full-time starters. Guys like Case and Barnhart, they just didn't play full-time, right? Yep. That's how good they are.
They built a machine over there.
Indeed, and it paid off for him. Another Michigan guy, you go back to that well at 179, Michael Barrett, linebacker. It's obviously a need. We like the 2 linebackers that they signed in free agency this year, but they're both on 1-year deals. There's no guarantee you're going to be able to sign either of those guys long-term, either Baker or Dodson. And so, you know, you and I have talked about this a lot. We got to get at least 1 guy and maybe even 2 on rookie contracts. Get someone on a 4-year deal in that room to learn from these guys and that you can dream on a little bit moving forward. Barrett might not be the most dynamic athlete in this class, but what is it you like about him?
Yeah, I definitely, you asked me earlier, what's like the one thing that kind of sucks about taking Penix early is you really miss that shot of getting an impact day 1 linebacker that might even push Dotson and Baker off.
How tempted were you at 81 or 102 to go linebacker?
I will be honest, Junior Colson was there at 81 in my mock, but I just don't think he will be there in real life. He might last to pick 70, and that's probably pushing it. I see him more likely to be a 2nd-round pick than a 3rd-round pick at this point. But you know what? You know who was his partner in crime for the last couple of years in Michigan? Michael Barrett. Yeah. Whereas Colson is like the physical embodiment of like a perfect linebacker. I really do feel that way. I think he's going to be a star. And I do think there's a real chance McDonald doesn't let him pass one way or the other in this draft. A lot of what he was able to do is because his little 5'11", 233-pound Tasmanian devil, partner in crime, Michael Barrett, covered up so much of some of Colson's mistakes in youth. And that I look at Barrett, and he may not look like the guy you want coming off the bus, but he sure as heck played like it this season. Former 3-star recruit. Think about that at Michigan. How many 3-star recruits see the field, right? Especially under Jim Harbaugh, the way the program developed over 10 years. I mean, he's really, if he had stayed, they could be terrifying for a long time. But he turned that 3-star recruit into a 6-year Michigan man. Barrett he's played 6 seasons at Michigan, injuries, red shirt, all sorts of stuff, COVID. But this season he was fantastic. 65 tackles on a loaded team like we talked about. You look at all of the Michigan stats. Every stat is down because they went 3 guys deep at every position. They could stay fresh. They were like an SEC team, and we saw that in the Rose Bowl when they beat Alabama. But when he was on the field, 65 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, 3 forced fumbles. All those fumbles are impact hits. This guy is around the ball. He's a ball hog. He is a ball hawk. He's an absolute menace in pass coverage. That is his specialty. This is not a linebacker that you're going to ask to play on the rundowns. This is the type of linebacker that you can play on passing downs or play action downs or anything that you need him to cover a running back out on the flats. That is what he is special at. He might be one of the 2 best linebackers in this class in terms of pass coverage. Rushing wise, I just have a hard time wondering how he'll hold up over the course of 60 minutes in a football game and over the course of a 17-game season at his size. I'm sure he's going to put on a little bit of weight and stuff. But at the end of the day, his style is that he shuts down the flats for you and that he will take away any crossers. And he is a fantastic blitzing linebacker. If you guys are interested, because I know you guys have probably only looked up Junior Colson highlights, look up Michael Barrett in the Rose Bowl against Alabama. Could make a case he was the best defensive player on the field for both teams. And there's a lot of NFL players on both sides of those football. On the football on that night, there's a sack that he hit on Milroe. I still don't think Milroe has recovered from that sack. I mean, he just laid him out. It reminded me, I told you the other day, it reminds me of some of those middle linebacker blitzes that Bobby would do. And the quarterback just had no idea he was coming. And Bobby just sent that guy 6 feet under. It feels like that. And you get that kind of player on special teams and as your third linebacker. I love that. I love that so much better than Cody Barton or any of that stuff.
Yeah, Matt Miller of ESPN just the other day tweeted out that Michael Barrett against Alabama last year was the best performance he'd seen from any linebacker in any game in 2023. So pretty impressive stuff there. You go guard again at 192, and this is a guy that I haven't studied.
Yeah, Samateo Lumea out of Utah, 4-year starter, all conference, multiple seasons, played most of his career as an offensive tackle, little bit of guard the last 2 seasons. He will have to transition to a guard. He is a big boy, 6'4", 319 pounds. This is a guy that you put him as a guard, he is going to be a run game mauler. This is a guy that is going to light up some guards, and if he gets his hands on a linebacker, that linebacker's going 20 yards down the field. Lateral quickness is not exactly his strong suit. A big reason why he has to go from tackle to guard. And I still think even as a guard, it might still be a question for him. It's something that he'll have to work on. But if you're going to run a dive, I would love to see Zinter, Oluwatimi, and Lumea just going straight north. Go north, go north, go north. You know, don't go in east and west. You don't want to run these guys east and west, but this is a guy, he can play multiple spots in a pinch probably. Again, we're talking about a 6th-round pick. You're looking for a little bit of a diamond in the rough. You're trying to get lucky here. So I want to get the biggest, baddest dude that I can find. And, we both watched a lot of Pac-12 football over the last few years. Utah, you knew what you were getting into when you played Utah. Physical, hard-nosed, run game. They're going to punch you in the mouth, and they're going to play their style. And if they don't beat you, then that's the way it is, but they're going to make you feel it. And I feel like he is a physical embodiment of that, and a guy that's worked in or played under Coach Whittingham for 4 years. I like that as a late round. Let's see what we get. I don't love our guard play right now, and so I would like to see someone else in this draft get a shot.
And then you finished with Anthony Gould of Oregon State, smaller receiver, return specialist, one of the most dynamic return guys in this draft. Returned a punt for a touchdown in the Shrine game that was featured like a. They were joking on the telecast. It was a 10-yard spin move. Like by the time he finished his spin move, he was 10 yards down the field. Was this pick influenced at all by the rule change in the kickoff that may bring the returner back into that play?
100%. There's a few other linebackers that might be sitting down there that we could get for depth. Gibbs out of Wyoming is a guy I've talked to you about. I'm a big fan of him. Super athletic, just in a small school. Not sure how well he would translate to the NFL, but that's a guy I would love to give a shot. But with Gould and the new rule change, I'll be honest. I don't want to see Eskridge returning kickoffs for this franchise, and I think Gould is extremely underrated. And I think he made the most out of his opportunities. You can make a case there wasn't a worse place for him to be a wide receiver in college football that's not a military school than Oregon State the last 2 years. That team runs the football. And he is 5'8", 174 pounds. So even with his small size, he's about the same size as Tank Dell from Houston. And Tank Dell played at Houston with the Cougars and got the ball a million times and was able to show, he can still produce even through the small stature, physical limitations of him. That wasn't always shown as the case at Oregon State, but at a 4.39, 40-yard dash, he's a good receiver. He caught 44 passes for 718 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. And then as a kick returner in 2022, he averaged 20 yards per return in 2 touchdowns. He only got 14 returns that year. And then this year, he only got punted to 7 times. Like the Pac-12 knows you don't kick it to this guy. So I want to see in the NFL what happens when they do kick it to that guy and you give him that type of running start in space. I would take him as late as a late 5th round pick, even if I feel, depending on how my draft goes. I really do think we'll see what ends up happening. I think that this new rule change could be a massive game changer for this season. And I guarantee you a playoff game or the Super Bowl, something will have a massive kick return implication that'll affect one of these games. And it'll be like, oh, okay, then next year everyone's going to start taking these type of guys that can be the next version of Devin Hester. Could you imagine Devin Hester with these rules? I mean, he'd be the best player in football. They would never kick to him. Yeah. And so that's where I'm at is let's get ahead of the curve of this new rule and let's go get what I think is the best punt returner in college football.
I applaud the NFL for, maybe they're a year too late because the XFL has been.
I love it. Yeah.
I applaud them for being a little more open-minded than they've been in the past and trying to get this play back into the game because I think it's fun and it's literally going to, give some guys, and Gould might be a good example of it, an opportunity to play in the league that might not otherwise have had that opportunity. And I also love the idea of swapping out a 7th round rookie contract cap hit for, D. Eskridge and basically, similar skill set. So, and maybe a more reliable guy.
I was gonna say maybe he'll actually be on the field. So.
Yeah, right. All right, let's see. So this.
Yeah, what'd you do?
This is what I did, and I wanted to stick and pick. Maybe in our simulation we're going to do in a minute, we'll play around with some trade back scenarios. But there aren't many guys in the middle of the 1st round that I would stick and pick for. But there has become one above all else for me. I have. Decided that I have set aside and properly interpreted Schneider's comments from a couple of years ago regarding the offensive line. I think some of that's been overblown. I think people have taken his comments to mean he doesn't value the guard position. I've heard people word it that way, or that he would never take a guy this high. When he talks about best player available, if he looks up on that board, because he also said in that same interview that they incorporate positional need into their grade. If Troy Fautano, who from just across the lake at UW, is sitting there at 16, and I don't care that, other teams now are seeing him more as a tackle because of the arm length. I think he is an absolute perfect fit for what they need. He's a perfect fit for the style of play that they want to have. He's nasty. He's athletic. He can pull. He can move. He can bury guys. There's the obvious familiarity with Scott Huff and Ryan Grubb. To me, if they look up and he's still on the board at 16, which he might not be, it's a no-brainer. You run to the podium and you turn it in, and you let the other teams that are trying to trade up to 16 know that you're just staying. I think there aren't many guys in this draft that realistically may be available at 16 that could have as much impact as a rookie on this roster.
100% agree. If I'm not taking Penix and I'm not, taking the quarterback plunge this year, if he's there, I think you run the card up. And there's some good players as well. We both like Verse. We both like Fuaga. There's a lot of guys. We both like some of the cornerbacks and stuff. But if he's there, it just feels right. Grubb, Huff. It's an area of need. If something happens with Lucas, you can move him to even right tackle potentially for a short time and just see what you could do. I feel like he's that much of a dynamic athlete that he could play all the spots if you really needed him to.
Some of those other guys that you talk about would require projection, right? Like I love Fuaga too. He's a beast, but can he play? Can he really make the move inside? Can he play the left side, right? What has to be moved around there? Would you have to move Bradford over the left side where he played more at LSU and then you know what I mean? It's Fautano. It's an easy projection because you've seen him do it. And then I'll take it a step further. You talk about maybe being a hedge for Lucas not being healthy and flipping him to the right side. What if Charles Cross doesn't take a step forward, right? What if next year they decide he's not worth exercising their 5th-year option on, and Fautanu might be at least a 2-year. He could kick out to left tackle in 2 years. So to me, it just makes
he looked like a franchise left tackle at UW last year, the last 2 years. He really has. So it wouldn't surprise me at all.
If he was 6'5" instead of 6'3", I think he might be the first tackle off the board.
I 100% agree.
And then we had to probably get one player in common here.
Yeah, there we go.
I go Bishop as well in the 3rd round. I like everything about him. And the more I study him, the more I see that there were things that some of the scouting reports on him said that he couldn't do, and it was simply because they didn't ask him to do those things. And that in the draft process, pro day, combine, interviews, everything else, he has answered those questions. And we've gone down the road on Cole Bishop. So I think safety is some people might not think it's a need high in the draft, but it's such an integral part of what Mike McDonald does, and he wants interchangeable safeties. And this guy's right up there with the best in the draft. And then I'm focused for the rest of my draft here on guys that I think have some connections. I think as we get closer to the draft, we see all the top 30 visits. Word starts to get out about guys they've met with. It doesn't always mean something, but sometimes it does as well. And when I looked at linebacker, once we get to the 4th round, you had some undersized guys, you had some smaller school guys. But Nathaniel Watson is a guy that they're bringing in for a top 30 visit.
That was really interesting.
Yeah, he is one of the rare ones in this class. It's a little bit bigger. I think at times he's been listed at 240. Because of that, there are some people who feel like coverage isn't a strength of his, although I just saw an interview with him the other day that he feels like he takes steps forward there every day and that he can cover in the NFL. But he's a versatile guy. Mike McDonald came out the other day and he said, if you're going to play for me, you got to be able to blitz. And you got to be able to hit. And Nathaniel Watson, they'd put him on the edge sometimes and bring him as a blitzer. And he's a thumper, and he can take on blocks. And he's maybe one of the least heralded award-winning players in this draft. He was SEC Defensive Player of the Year last year.
SEC is pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good conference, right? And you're seeing a diversity of offenses, and you're seeing spread stuff, and you're seeing run-based offenses, and it just seems like good value in the 4th round there.
Love it.
And then a guy that I think is unfortunately moving up draft boards. I think the consensus is starting to catch up to the fact that Brennan Jackson is not a 6th or 7th round guy. And he's not a favorite of mine just because he's a Coug. I think the size,
he's a ball player.
Size speed combination, you put that together with character and motor. And I look at his frame too, and he's listed at 265. I wonder if you can't put 10 or 15 pounds on him and he can play some defensive end as well in that scheme, or you keep him where he is because he can drop a little bit. Just, embodies everything they look for in personality type. He's one of those guys that Didn't go in the transfer portal, came back for one extra year because he thought Washington State had a chance to win some things last year. He wanted to be a part of that. I think there's some other guys in the 4th round that maybe are a little bit more traitsy, but I just think Brendan Jackson can play, man. I think he's going to help somebody.
He feels like a Seahawk pick, like this new version of post-COVID with Schneider wanting to just get best player available, high character guys. This is a guy that I really think checks all those boxes. And I personally think edge is actually a major like secret need, depending on how things go, especially in this kind of scheme that McDonald had. They didn't rely on one guy. And maybe that's because McDonald didn't have one guy, but like he brought his team in waves. And like, I love what we saw from some of these guys this year for the Seahawks, but you could definitely tell we were 2 or 3 bodies short on the defensive line. And Nuoso getting hurt was a big part of that, which I consider him part of that group and stuff. And so I think Brennan's a guy that really by the second half of the year could be taking minutes from people. Snaps from guys. I really do think he fits everything that Mike wants. And John.
And look, Darrell Taylor needs to make the team. There's no guarantee he's going to. With the way they reworked his deal, he has an opportunity to earn more money. They cooked some incentives into that deal, but there's also almost no guaranteed money. And so if he doesn't make the team, and I've even had it, somebody suggested to me the other day that when OTAs start next week, a week from today, if McDonald doesn't get a good first impression from him, he could be a guy that might have some trade value in this draft because that edge position really does fall off on day 3. So, we'll find out a lot more in a few weeks here. Jaheim Bell, one of the more interesting tight ends in this class because he's certainly not the classic size. A tight end, he's a little smaller guy, kind of an H-back type. Florida State used in some creative ways, but again, Seahawks either met with him as one of their official visits at the combine, or he's top 30, one of the two. I think he was a combine. Yeah. Okay. Which obviously means that they have some interest in his unique skill set. Sort of just a Swiss Army knife toy for the offense.
Could honestly be the guy that might push Derek Young out if Derek can't stay healthy, type of a thing. Not saying necessarily that Derek Young's going to get cut or anything, but like, I think we all were a little excited about the potential of what Derek Young could be when we saw him in a game or two. I really feel like Bell can come in and do that and probably even do it a little bit better and be flexible. Obviously, we'll see what ends up happening. Washington didn't really use a ton of a fullback, but they did use their tight end Westover, who I know we already did my draft. I definitely think Westover is a very strong UDFA candidate to come to Seattle with Grubb and stuff. And Bell could be like a supercharged version of that, a guy that should just help take some passes out of the flats, maybe run a few things. But also, he ran a few vertical routes and did just fine and cooked a few of those linebackers in the ACC over at Florida State. I like that pick, and I definitely feel like Noah Fant got a really nice contract, but there's also a way out of it very quickly. And Pharaoh Brown, I feel like, is very clearly like Will Dissly style. He's going to be your run blocking tight end that's going to just destroy people. I really want to have a tight end that can really stretch the field and do some unique things. And Fant can do that. But I definitely know that I've seen Bell do that recently at Florida State.
Yeah, and they did some fun things with him, kind of like they did with Young as a rookie. They would line him up in the backfield and put him in motion a lot. And I failed to mention that I did pick up an extra pick, so I have 8 here, and that was the pick we got from Green Bay to take Bell, the 26th pick in the 4th round, by moving down from I moved down from 317 down to 324 with Green Bay. There's a couple opportunities in this draft to trade with Green Bay. One's in the 1st round, which we might take advantage of in a little bit here because they have some extra picks and an already young roster, and they may be looking to move up in this draft. Then we have to go all the way to the 6th round unless we pick up extra picks. And again, I'm looking for versatility on that offensive line. And Brandon Coleman's a guy that played a lot of left tackle at TCU, but is projected to move inside, although he can stay, his measurables are such that another guy that could in a pinch play tackle if he had to, but moved inside at the Senior Bowl, looked really, really good at left guard.
Yeah, a lot of experience. A lot of the talent is there. I just feel like if I'm running a franchise these days, I'm just loading up on versatile offensive linemen, unless I got like that traditional franchise left tackle or the best center, in the game right there. Why not get these guys?
The Eagles have feasted on that philosophy for years. Guys that are drafted. Landon Dickerson was a center. They moved him to guard. They've had tackles move to guard. They've had tackles switch sides. It's they've been the leaders of that.
And the same thing what I was looking at with Lumea and stuff. I just really feel like that's the way to go. Get these versatile guys that, hey, oh crap, someone got hurt. I need you to do 2 quarters playing at a position out. Oh, okay, I've done that before. It's not where, I have to keep, a player on this roster that I don't want to keep because he's the only one that can play that position. Yeah. No, we have to get more modern on those things. Brandon Coleman at round 6 would be an absolute steal. I love it.
And then at some point, I've been telling people this for weeks. Most fans think that we don't need a receiver at any point in this draft because they're set, right? And I just hate that philosophy. You're never set. When you think you are, you aren't. We have 2 receivers that have massive cap hits. We have one that's on the wrong side of 30. We drafted one in the first round last year. And then our 4th receiver is an undrafted free agent that's going to be, limited in what he can do because of his athletic profile. And so, to me, receiver is absolutely one of those positions that you draft every single year, no matter what. You need those guys on special teams. And Bub Means, the guy I wasn't familiar with, and then he goes to the combine and really tests well. Good size, speed candidate who's got, I just like his body type and a guy who was productive at Pittsburgh. But you have to keep adding to that room, right?
Yep, speed. You never know what the future holds. You never know. We feel like we're a deep team or a deep roster at wide receiver, but if DK gets hurt and misses a couple games, that receiving core looks so different.
Yep, absolutely.
If JSN misses time, that looks real shallow again, and it looks real easy to guard the Seahawks in the passing game. As much as I love Bobo, I have zero confidence because he has proven he can't stay healthy and de-estrogen. Like, there's no reason why we shouldn't walk out of this draft with a wide receiver. And you and I both have one taken in the 6th or 7th round. I wouldn't be opposed to taking one in the 3rd or 4th round. I really wouldn't.
No, I think that's we'll play
Is
around.
Is it the best use of resources?
I think that's how
maybe it's not, but yeah, exactly.
I don't think they get past the 4th round without taking a receiver. I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
And then I finished up with Tyrese Knight out of UTEP.
Yeah.
Raw linebacker, but you can see, you see him take wrong steps sometimes, but man, there's a lot of traits there, and he's a guy coming in for a top 30 visit, so it's certainly someone on their radar.
Redshirt him, let him be a special teams monster, and feast on the fruits of your labors in 2025. That would be my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's do this because I don't want to take your entire day away from you here.
You're good. Let's do it.
So
let's go win a Super Bowl.
We thought, hey, we're going to be here. We're going to be talking about mock drafting. Let's do one. Let's just do one. And we'll do it this way. We'll alternate. Okay. So I'll let you take the 1st round pick, and then we'll just kind of go back and forth from there and try to put this thing together. I do think because both of us in our mocks that we showed earlier stuck at 16 and picked, I feel like you'd agree that maybe we should see what it looks like if we trade down. And so let's go to this. This is my new favorite mock draft simulator. Shout out to the guys at Walk the Mock. They reached out to me. I wasn't able to do their live mock thing they did last week. I had a scheduling conflict, but it introduced me to this tool. And there's some things I really, really like about it. First of all, I just love the interface. It looks like old school ESPN with the scroll at the bottom. But I thought what we would do is I've got it all set up here. So as soon as I hit skip to my pick, it'll shoot down to 16 and we'll see. And sometimes there's some weird things that happen, but for the most part, like, in this one, they build some randomness. All of these simulators do into their algorithm. Malik Neighbors isn't going to go 1-1 overall, but when you look at the totality of the guys in the top 10, the names are right. They're just in a little bit of a weird order. Right. And so I don't think there's any huge curveballs. We do get to 16 and Fautano's still on the board, but do you agree with me that we should take a trade down and just see what that looks like?
Yeah, I think we both said that we would take him if we were sticking and picking, if it was our decision. So let's look elsewhere.
So to me, the most obvious trade down is Green Bay. Some people have suggested that Kansas City moving up from 32 is almost a perfect match on the trade chart if they give up their 2 and their 3. I don't think they're going to do that. I just think that's unrealistic. They don't even have their full assortment of picks. But Green Bay has extra picks. I think they have 10 or 11 in this draft. They already have the youngest roster in the league. They're really good. They were kind of ahead of schedule last year with their playoff performance. And so I think they're going to be looking more for impact and dynamic players. And if they see someone at 16, especially at that tackle position, right. That they might want to jump up and get one. And it's a pretty close match. You can get it exactly if you swap thirds and things. But I think it comes to within 40 points if we were to take their second of their 2 twos.
Yeah.
It's a 40-point difference, but the team moving up is the one that's paying 40 more points on the old Jimmy Johnson trade chart. I think it's close enough to just at least get in that range and give us a different feel for what it would be like to actually get a second-round pick.
100%. I think people need to remember, just because the trade, you don't have to make it equal. That's not how it works in the NFL trades. The teams that want to move up have somebody that they are so desperate for that they are willing to give up more of what they have to get that person.
Trades
almost every trade up. Yeah.
Trades only cost what a team is willing to pay. Right.
Exactly.
I had someone tell me the other day on Twitter, they're like, nobody uses the trade charts. I'm like, yeah, they all do. They use different ones. Some have their own, analytic teams that build their own. But there are some, Daniel Jeremiah talked about on the draft last year. There are still some teams in the NFL that have the Jimmy Johnson chart in front of them at all times and use that as a basis. So I found that fascinating. So we skip to, and let's see. So we go down to 25. Quinyon Mitchell's a corner that I think would fit their scheme. Terrion Arnold as well. Brock Bowers goes off the board at 20. That'll make Russell Wilson happy, although he doesn't really like to throw to his tight ends. Darius Robinson was a guy that might be in play. Amarius Mims. So Fautanu is still there at 25. I'll let you decide what you want to do. But here over to the left side, let me know if you want to look at any specific positions, but this is the all board here.
Yeah. So where I'm at is I'm just going to assume Fautanu is not here. We've already done that. Right. Then what you and I have talked about it and I've written about it quite a bit over at 12th Man. For me, if we're not taking a quarterback, I want to go trenches and I want to try and get somebody that can be a blue chip style player for me. And in my opinion, the type of guys that can do that so far, what we have available is either Murphy out of Texas, Johnny Newton out of Illinois, if Barton is there from Duke, or Powers Johnson from Oregon. Those are the 4 guys that I want to make sure I walk out of this draft with if I'm getting a late first and I'm picking up a second-round pick. Because in my opinion, if I get a day one starting defensive tackle, which I believe Murphy and Newton are, that's awesome. If I get a day one starting awesome guard or center, I know we love Olu, but just that versatility of being able to play those positions, which Powers Johnson and Barton both have, that's awesome. Because in the second round, I can probably go and compensate what I didn't pick with that second round pick. And then that goes back to what we had talked about with Penix. Would I rather have a starter on both offensive and defensive line, but I don't get a guy like Penix, or I don't stick and pick maybe a Brock Bowers if he's still there at 16, or a Terrion Arnold? Or do I take one of those guys and then I'm just waiting until pick 81 for Bishop and then I'm getting Zinter and Mason Smith type of a thing. So for me, I would go either Murphy or Barton. And I can't remember if Barton was still there and stuff.
Yes.
But
Yep, he hasn't been taken.
That guy's relative athletic score is off the chart. His tape looks fantastic. You've never heard of him because he played at Duke, right. And their season went off the rails when Riley Leonard got hurt. But they were about to beat Florida State before injuries kind of impacted them, and that's when they barely even had their starting quarterback. So for me, I would take Graham Barton. I really think that Barton has a chance to kind of what we were talking about with Fautanu, but I think Barton can have that type of impact while also getting a second round pick.
I'm with you, man. I love Byron Murphy, but I'm not so.
That's a tough pick. That's a tough decision.
I'm not so sure how much impact he'd make as a rookie, as a 3-tech, because I think they're pretty set there. Although I'd love him long term. But Barton's a guy that he's not too far behind Fautanu in my mind, because he's really athletic. Did his pro day with his shirt off the other day. I thought that was a baller move. I
believe he's
can really move the way Ryan Grubb likes his guys to move, but he also will stick you in the ground too.
I believe he scored a perfect 10 as a center for his relative athletic score, and then his guard was like a 9.94, like off the charts, like arguably one of the most physically talented and gifted interior offensive linemen to ever enter the league.
Yeah, you talked about versatility. Might be the only guy in this draft that has played all 5 positions. Like has been starting at Duke at left tackle the last couple of years out of necessity, but as a freshman started at center, didn't he?
Yeah, no, just everything you could want. What we just talked about is that versatility to be able to plug any hole while being great at it. Like it's a no-brainer for me.
Well, now we don't have to watch the entire second round go by.
Hey, here we go.
We get down. So we're at 226. We're near the end of the second round.
Okay.
Here's the all board. So Edgerrin Cooper, Braden Fisk.
Wow.
Peyton Wilson's still on the board. Oof. That may not be realistic. There's some first round buzz now for him, which a lot of teams don't tend to go linebacker in the first round, but his injury history is still one that might scare some teams off. Chris Jenkins, we already went. Oh, no, we didn't. Jatavian Sanders, Ricky Pearsall. Okay. So
Junior Colson was there.
I think, to me, I think this one's pretty obvious, right? You've addressed your most glaring need immediately with Graham Barton in the first round. Now I need to think a little bit more about the big picture, right? And about establishing a culture and a scheme and a style of play. And while love Braden Fisk, despite the short arms, love the fact that the Seahawks are meeting with him or have met with him. That tells me something. I can get really excited about Peyton Wilson's athleticism, Chris Jenkins' leadership, and his twitchy athletic ability in the middle of that defensive line. But when you have a guy who's played 3 seasons as a starter in Mike Macdonald's scheme, who was trusted when McDonald was the defensive coordinator for him his true freshman year as just a kid to play the mic. And then he just turned 21 years old. And so all sorts of sky's the limit ahead of him. If you have an opportunity to get Junior Colson, to me, that's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not that they worked together for a year. They won their first Big Ten championship together. They beat Ohio State together for the first time. Like a lot of those first, I know it ended horribly in the Orange Bowl against Georgia, but like they've been through stuff together that like they'll remember forever. I really have a hard time seeing McDonald not taking him there, which brings up that question. I mean, for everyone that's going to be watching this is, what would you rather have? Would you rather have Penix and that's it? Or would you rather have Fautanu and that's it? Or in this scenario, I can get Barton and Colson. Yeah. Like that's potentially 2 captains, Pro Bowl, I would say blue chip potential type players there. Like in my opinion, that is one of the best interior offensive lineman prospects to enter the NFL. And in my opinion, I think is my NFL comp for Junior Colson is Demario Davis out of New Orleans, who's just been a constant tackling machine, Pro Bowler, will probably be a Ring of Honor type of guy in New Orleans. I just have a hard time not taking both of those as much as I want Troy Fautanu and as much as I want Michael Penix. I don't know how you say no to that opportunity.
Nobody else in this draft at the inside linebacker position can match Colson's size and athletic ability combo. 6'3", 247. No one's in that. It's interesting the way they have their big board here on, just as a little side note, because even though cornerback is a position that I think fans would tend to freak out if the Seahawks took, I fully expect that it's possible they might take a corner at a spot in this draft somewhere where fans think it's a little crazy. I've considered Cooper DeJean in the first round a few times, depending on how things fall, because I think Mike McDonald would absolutely love his versatility. But even though he's a smaller corner, he's a slot specialist. Mike Sainris's still here right behind Junior Colson. If Colson was off the board and this exact same scenario played out, all the guys at Michigan, if you ask them who set the tone and who was the alpha dog leader on that team, they would say Mike Sandersill. And he's a guy that coaches just rave about. I could see him being the pick. But we're going to go Colson, and we're going to lock up, our long-term Mike linebacker to go along with Barton.
It's a hell of a linebacker room now.
Yeah. Yeah. And you start to look long-term now. Now we got a guy on a 4-year contract. And so, Jerome Baker, Terrell Dodson get to kind of battle it out for who gets offered the extension. I think the more that I see them talk about Dodson and the more film breakdowns I see from people that really know what they're talking about with linebacker play, I think they see Dodson as a dude that could be here for a while. So that's a fun combination, those two.
Absolutely.
So now we get down into the we're at 317, middle of the 3rd round. This is their native pick, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's look at the overall. So I'll just scroll down the board here for you. But let me know if you want to see any particular position groups.
So I noticed this is an area where I would be looking at safety, or I'd be looking at defensive tackle. I would, and also another place I probably would like to wait till pick 102. But for wide receiver, this is another area. If you find a guy that you love, that you feel like next year can be Tyler Lockett's replacement, and if you love him, take him now. And I'm a huge Brendan Rice guy. I really like Devontae Walker. Johnny Wilson is kind of a weird. Is he a tight end? Is he a wide receiver? McMillan, we know the connection with Grubb and stuff. And so that's definitely an area that I'm looking at. For me,
line group that's left.
And
Paul, Tyler Davis, Dwayne Carter, McKinley Jackson, who the Seahawks have met with. And it drops off, man, the drop off.
Yeah. And so for me in this scenario, looking at that, I'm looking at either Michael Hall, Wingo, or McKinley Jackson. After that, I might just not go defensive tackle in this draft, which is kind of rough to think. I believe they also met with Newton's teammate. I can't remember. He might have already gotten drafted in this.
Yeah, the other Illinois, Keith Randolph.
Yeah, Keith Randolph. I know they were going to meet with him. Yeah, those are probably the 4 guys I might be looking at. We already took Cole Bishop in our mocks, so I won't take him again. So I really like Michael Hall. I'd be surprised if Mike McDonald was going to take a Buckeye, but maybe he's able to let his allegiance lie.
Listed here at 280, but recently I've seen him over 290.
Yeah. He's a name that's starting to rise up the draft board after having, I would consider, a disappointing season, but he looks good off the bus. He sounds like he's been working out really well and all that stuff. So for me, I would either go Hall here, or I would take a wide receiver, and then with the next pick, I'd probably take whatever was left of those 2. So
let's do it, because he's a guy that I like. I know you've been high on him for a while, but I never take him. So let's just make this mock work a little bit different.
Before the season started, they were talking about him as a 1st-round pick, and it just didn't materialize, which there was a lot of defensive players that had that moniker this year that did not show up.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that they can't. They just didn't during their season.
All right, so now the first of our 2 4th-round picks. This is one that we got by trading down with Washington in the Sam Howell trade. So it's the 2nd pick on day 3, which is kind of cool. It gives them the whole night to kind of map it out. You can move up a spot if you really want to guarantee yourself a player. So that's kind of fun. And so this is my pick, and I'm with you. So I kind of like the plan that you had laid out earlier. I do just want to look at corner to see if anyone's fallen. No, there really isn't anyone that really excites me that slipped through the cracks there. And so I'm with you. I think wide receiver falls off pretty quick after this. You got Brendan Rice there. Who's more of an outside guy. I'm a little higher on Jalen McMillan. The more I read now that he's 100% healthy, was reading a scout's comments the other day that they think he's one of the guys that's being overlooked in this entire draft. He can play inside and outside. There's obviously the familiarity there with Ryan Grubb. I think he's just a versatile guy. If they have designs on JSN maybe being not just a slot only guy and moving him around a little bit, I think McMillan's burst and versatility to me, gives him a little bit of an edge over Brendan Rice. I like Brendan Rice. Like, he's just smooth. He's smooth as butter. He really is. Makes things look easy.
Does he remind you of anybody?
Let's not go there. I don't want that kid, right? For those of
but
you,
he does have some of that smoothness.
His dad was a pretty good receiver in the NFL.
Yeah. A former Seahawk legend.
Let's go. And again, I like to mix it up a little bit. I've taken Brendan Rice a ton of times.
Yeah.
Let's go Jalen McMillan here, just because I do.
McMillan's interesting because before the season started, there was no world in which Jalen Polk went above McMillan.
Right. Yeah.
And now that's expected, and
it seems to be the
not. I mean, Polk was fantastic, but it also had to do with just McMillan missing time.
Now, another, you've seen me do this a bunch, but Luke McCaffrey's a guy that I love and would take in this spot too.
Stick it to the Niners.
Get that brotherly rivalry. All right, so now we're at 418, our second 4th round pick. There's an interesting name right off the top that I know you're probably noticing. So far we've addressed offensive guard, even though Barton's listed as a tackle, linebacker, defensive tackle, and wide receiver.
So if I was running the Seahawks here, I would say I have hit every single one of my needs if I'm doing that. And I also feel like we balance that out with best player available. Now, the area that I would be looking at as a luxury would be to complete my tight end room is definitely an area I'm looking at, or I'm looking at safety. And to see Theo Johnson right there is very, very tempting. To see,
Look at his
a couple of really good side.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about a guy with athletic upside, just height, weight, 6, what do they got him listed at now? 6'6", 264, but he's 93rd percentile broad jump, 96 vertical, 91st percentile 40-yard dash. Looks like he has soft hands. Split time at tight end there with Penn's. I can't remember the other kid's name, but he's probably going to be one of the top tight ends coming out next year. Lots of upside here.
I was super high on Penn State this season to make a run to the college football playoff, and their quarterback play was just horrendous from their top 5, or not their top 5, but their 5-star prospect, Drew Aller. Maybe next year he develops a little bit more. But Theo Johnson in the right scheme might have been a borderline day 2 tight end. Probably a very comfortable day 2 tight end. He physically has it. And like I just said earlier, I want a guy that can stretch the field. I'm not asking for a guy that's going to be there on the goal line trying to get 1 yard to get the touchdown. I want a guy on play action that's going to go 20 yards down the field and take that thing to the house over a safety. I don't think it's a question. Give me Theo Johnson. And I think we have one of the freakiest offensive receiving cores, if you include the tight ends as well, in the league. You had Johnson, JSN, McMillan, and DK Metcalf with Lockett. That's all you could ask for, Gino. Yeah.
And just a guy that, if any of you go to YouTube and look up Theo Johnson highlights, you're going to see him running down the seam. And that's, something that we hope Noah Fant ends up doing in this new offense, but we haven't seen enough as much as we've wanted it from some of our tight ends in the past. Yeah. So now we fall all the way to the 6th round. We got to skip. We're going to see a bunch of these names that we like just go flying off the board. And just as I head into the 6th round, I'm looking to pick up a second offensive lineman. And I'm really I got to come away with one of these value safeties later on in this draft. And there's one guy in particular. He's been moving up boards. The days of being able to get Dominique Hampton in the 6th round are over. What's your take on? I know Rob Staten loves this kid.
Loves him. Yes.
Tell me about Malik Mustafa.
Very interesting. I'm obviously not as high on Rob as him. I thought he had a good year. I thought this is a guy that definitely could have played his way into the 2nd or 3rd round, and he just didn't. And I think a lot of that had to do with just kind of the way that season ended up for Wake Forest and stuff. But you're talking about, again, a guy that can come in. You're not asking him to be your starting safety. You're asking him to kind of rotate into this safety trio. And I can't think of a better place for him to learn and develop for a year or two. And in this pick, what are we picking at? Round 6? It's a no-brainer on the potential of a guy that probably could have been a third-round pick if he was more locked in this year.
Yeah, I don't know that I love this group, though. And in the 6th round, I'm kind of thinking of, I think I'm higher on some of the under the radar guys too. So, they have the 3 safety now in Love, Jenkins, and they brought in Wallace.
Yeah.
I'm bullish on Kobe Bryant and his conversion to safety.
Can't forget about him. Yeah.
Jonathan Sutherland is a guy that was getting first team reps late in camp last year as an undrafted guy, and then he got hurt, and then they were able to bring him back after he healed up and keep him on the practice squad all year. I think Jarek Reed, obviously, when he recovers from his ACL. So I'm thinking at this point there's going to be guys in undrafted free agency. I'm not sure that Josh Proctor is going to change the equation at all, or off it even in the 6th round.
Those are special teams players.
Let me go back and let's look at the offensive linemen. There's Coleman. We've already taken him. Isaiah Adams is a guy that I'm late to, but just was looking at him yesterday, as a matter of fact, because I was looking for interior guys whose scouting reports rave about their movement skills and their ability to pull and get to the second level. Isaiah Adams make any sense to you here, or do you like the athletic upside of a smaller school guy in Garrett Greenfield, who really burst onto the scene at the combine and who most seem to think, even at 6'6", is probably looking at a move inside?
No, I mean, for me personally, at round 6, if Isaiah Adams is there, that's probably the floor about where he would last before he's taken. This is a guy that's been coached and developed over the years. Oh my gosh, his name just escaped me. He used to coach at Wisconsin for all the Rose Bowls. Oh,
yeah, we'll think of it. We'll
he was their head coach, and and then he went to Arkansas and failed, and came to Illinois. And Illinois, they run the football. They pound the rock. If I'm taking an offensive lineman later in the rounds, I want a guy. I'm not expecting the best, most athletic offensive lineman. I want a guy that's going to be able to get me 5 yards in a cloud of dust, and he's going to do that all day long for me. And so that's where I like guys like Andrew Rame and Isaiah Adams. So for sure, I would take Adams over Mustafa if that was ever a question. I think Adams could start this season.
This is my pick, right?
Yeah, this is yours.
I may go Trevor Keegan here. He's at the top of the board. Seahawks can't
go wrong.
They've met with him. There's obviously familiarity there. Mike McDonald's going to know him. Jay Harbaugh's going to know him. And he's a guy that has that versatility too. He's played a lot of guard. I think he played mostly guard at Michigan, but he's played some people see him as a right tackle potentially. Mm-hmm. And he's certainly a guy that is familiar with the kind of culture that McDonald's trying to establish. And I thought at his size, 6'6", 320, really surprised me at the combine and impressed me with his movement skills and his athletic ability. So I just want to come out of this 6th round with a guy that can play multiple positions, and I like the Michigan product. Yeah. All right, so that gets us to we're going to go down to our second 6th rounder now, and that's your pick. Let me know what you want to see.
Oh man, at this point it's more like best player available.
And this is where Schneider. I love that he's doing, for the 2nd year now, he's doing his own show on 710, because he's always kind of hidden the shadows. He only comes out a couple times a year, combine, draft, and then game days during the season. But he seems to get more comfortable with it, and he's more transparent about his process. And he kind of clarified it last week as early in the draft, even though we work positional need into the draft grade, we draft best player available day 1 and 2. We get into the 4th and 6th round. Now we're drafting for need, so we don't end up with a log jam and we're filling in some holes.
I love that.
Yeah, I thought that was great. So what are you looking at here?
So here I'd love to.
A year ago, or remember 7 or 8 months ago when we thought Sam Hartman was going to be potentially a day 2 pick as a quarterback?
Just a horrible draft process for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, he got exposed.
Drake Stoops is an interesting slot option. That would be your punt and kick returner. He had a fantastic final 2 years of his career. Frank Gore Jr., you really want to stick it to the Niners. That would be fun.
He looked good in the Shrine Bowl, man.
Oh, I know.
He looked a lot like his dad, actually.
Mm-hmm. No, he did. Man, I think I would want to go with those two guys right there, as either Zion or Braden McGregor. I think it'd be fun just to get an edge guy that might be able to do a little special teams, and who knows, maybe you get lightning in a bottle. When Zion was healthy, he definitely would not have been a 7th-round pick, but
No.
injuries have definitely affected him the last 2 seasons. I remember when he was getting first-round looks before 2022 started.
Yeah.
Just with the health, and then Braden McGregor again. I know we've joked about this, but like I think you could take an entire draft of Michigan Wolverines and you're probably walking away feeling pretty good.
Yeah,
and because there's so many of them, they're getting pushed down.
Yeah, what they have matches up so well with what the Seahawks need. It's
and again,
remarkable.
We talk about it, but like they're deep. The guy that built Michigan's defense, McDonald, like he knows these guys. He's been a part of these guys, and like it's one thing, when Pete Carroll came from USC to Seattle, USC was kind of at the tail end of their run. McDonald was there for 1 year, and like we're talking about, there's 18 guys that are probably going to get drafted from Michigan this year. Like, and with Grubb, we're talking about an offensive coordinator and our head coach who's running our defense that were in charge of the 2 best teams in college football last year. And it probably wasn't even that close other than Georgia. Like, it makes sense to kind of lean in and take some of these guys, and they would know better. So for me, I would go to the well again, and I'd take McGregor. I
love Braden McGregor too. I think either of these guys make sense, but the lack of health questions about McGregor, and also the way he finished last year. I think he had 3.5 sacks in their last 5 games.
Yeah,
he was a major factor in that national championship game. More of a stand-up edge, but a guy that's athletic enough. He's just long, 6'6", 267 listed there, can certainly drop. And a guy that it's, I was talking to Emery Hunt on the show yesterday about how sometimes guys on TV or on tape just look so much different than the specs you're seeing in front of you. And the first time I saw Braden McGregor and I saw him stand on the edge ready to come off, I thought I was looking at Eastern Michigan Max Crosby tape. I thought he was going to have 36-inch arms when he measured at the combine, and he's
scary looking.
He came in at 32.5, and I thought, wait a minute, what am I not seeing here? Because it looks like his arms go down to his ankles, but just super. A lot of the things I like about Brennan Jackson, I like about Braden McGregor. Just you never have to question the motor. Really high energy. Doesn't really have a lot in the toolkit as far as moves go, but that can be taught. The effort can't be. And, it'd be a 3rd Michigan guy, but I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. You want, if there's a tiebreaker that you need and you're looking at your board and a guy that is there, you're going to take the guy right?
Yeah, I would be stunned if we don't have a Husky and a Wolverine in our draft. And if Vegas was doing it, I would say the over-under is probably 3.5. For how many Wolverines and Huskies combined, and I would take the over. I really would. And honestly, the reason why we don't is just because too many of them get taken. But I really think with our draft, the amount of picks that we have after we trade, which I do think Seattle will trade back, it makes sense to me.
So now we get down to our last pick, right smack in the middle of the 7th round, 7:15. We've addressed offensive line twice. We've addressed linebacker, defensive line, wide receiver, tight end, and edge. I am going to take a peek here because I wouldn't mind double dipping at linebacker for the reasons we talked about earlier, getting a couple guys on 4-year deals. They've met with Tyrese Knight, or they are meeting with him, but again, I think that would make a lot of sense here. You could play special teams while he learns on the job. Certainly there's athletic upside to be sure, but just for the sake of, we've already done that. Let me look here. No. Okay. It's not what I wanted. I was going to, a lot of times in these drafts, I take a quarterback in the 7th round, because you have to remember when you get to the 7th round, sometimes it's about recruiting. Your scouting staff is already burning up the phone lines, trying to get agents to commit for their undrafted guys, because that begins immediately. And as guys start to fall into the 7th round, they want to know where they're going to go. And so if you don't feel like you're getting the commitment that you want from a certain player, you just draft him in the 7th round. because in there. I don't see the guy that I want here. I've been taking Devin Leary pretty regularly in the 7th round. I think he has more NFL throws on tape than anyone else that's going to go on day 3.
They met with John Reese Plumlee, right?
They did. I think he slips through undrafted.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
He'll be fun in the season, but yeah, I'm probably looking special teams here. I'm looking secondary. And I know I said earlier I don't think he tilts the room, but a guy like Josh Proctor, who played at a big program like Ohio State, he looks the part. 6'2", 205.
Dominique Hampton fell all the way.
Yeah. Oh, he did.
That ain't happening. There's no way that happens.
No, it's not. I didn't see him earlier because he's so low.
That's interesting. They have him that rated.
He's worked his way up. If he's there in the 7th round, this isn't a question.
Right.
Not a question. 6'3", 220. He can play free or strong. I don't know if Josh Proctor is a twitchy enough athlete for me, though. Let's see. Let's see if there's a defensive lineman that we can sneak in here. Now, you know what I'm going to do just for the sake of sticking with, I don't know the running backs well enough in this class because I haven't studied them because it's not a big need. No. But DJ Dallas departed. Do you feel like any of these guys kind of fit the Seahawk mold? Or get it undrafted, right? And we're probably spending time on this, right?
I mean, if there was one, it'd be McClellan from Alabama, I think. But even then, again, it's like, well, we just have McIntosh. Like, is he going to be a part of anything? Or
yeah, let's just go. I know I took him in my draft earlier, but just for the sake of I think this makes sense. We'll go Tyrese.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So let's look at our overall results here. There we go on the left-hand side right here. Graham Barton, after trading back with Green Bay, picking up a 2nd-round pick. So we go Graham Barton. He's your starting left guard as a rookie. Junior Colson, your long-term Mike linebacker, but he'll play. He'll play as a rookie. Michael Hall, 3 technique, kind of a long-term piece there. Jalen McMillan adding to that wide receiver room, a versatile guy. Theo Johnson, all sorts of upside. Trevor Keegan, Braden McGarry. This outside of Barton, I can probably guess that some fans aren't going to love this draft because a lot of these guys aren't going to play big minutes as rookies. Right? This is more of a draft for 2025 and beyond. Yeah,
I think you have two guys that are probably close. I mean, Graham's an immediate starter. Colson, you would like to think he'd push to start right away, considering where you're taking him in his experience. But yeah, Michael Hall, Jalen McMillan, Theo Johnson, 100%, those are guys that are probably making impacts for you in 2025.
Yeah.
But I would also argue all 3 of those guys have red chip potential. They can be really good role players, very good players on your championship run that you have next up and stuff. So, and then the rest of it, you're just getting high energy, potential talent guys, winners from Michigan, and then Knight, who has all the potential in the world, just needs to learn how to play the position. So, yeah, I would say this is basically you're laying the groundwork for the next 3 years, next 4 years with this team, while getting the best possible player at your most needed positions in Barton and Colson, which I think that would be a home run win right there.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly representative draft of what this draft class looks like too. Because of the lack of depth, you're not going to get as many guys as you do in other years that slip to the 3rd, 4th, 5th round that pop as rookies. We overlook this guy. He's a Pro Bowler. He's a potential star. It's about scheme fit, about guys that fit into your locker room that can be long-term contributors. I think we've done that.
And that doesn't mean that can't happen. I could definitely see a scenario where McMillan comes in and you're like, oh man, McMillan he's a number 1 receiver. He just was playing with Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk in that team. Or you're looking at Michael Hall and you're like, oh, he just needed the right coaching. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, we don't even need, we've got Leonard Williams, but sorry, who's our oh gosh, the guy we just paid all that money to last year. His name is Harris.
Oh, Draymond Jones.
Yeah, Draymond Jones. It's like, oh man, geez, after a month of preseason, it's pretty clear Michael Hall is actually better than Draymond Jones.
Yeah.
Which goes to say I can't even remember his name all of a sudden.
New coach
shows what he did.
None of these guys are on scholarship, new coaching staff. Everybody starts out at ground zero, right? So, that's an interesting philosophy. And I think, look, fans love Jake Bobo, but he is what he is. And I think the connection with Ryan Grubb, I think, Jalen McMillan comes in 100% healthy. He's finding a role as a rookie, and he might be your fourth guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we saw with Grubb, you need 4 wide receivers. If Grubb is truly going to bring what he did at UW to Seattle, you're going to need 4 talented receivers. And if Bobo's your 5th receiver, that's perfect. If he's your 4th, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, I agree. Man, we have mocked the Monday, even though this will be Tuesday. Yeah.
Did it.
Always love having you on the show and appreciate so much time. I know we ran a little long, but it was worth it. We had fun.
It was a blast. Thank you.
And I think the viewers are going to love it too. So, Michael Thompson, are you working on anything draft related right now for 12th Man Rising? What are you coming up?
Yeah. So actually the mock that we just did today, I'll have a 3-round mock draft out tomorrow at 12th Man Rising, where I really talk a little bit more about why it makes sense for Seattle to consider taking Michael Penix. There'll be some talk about Cole Bishop and Mason Smith as well. But really the meat of the article is just kind of, if Seattle decides they're ready to go down that path, which a lot of people in the media are starting to think that this could be why, and why it could actually, the time might be now to make that jump for Michael Penix.
Good. And then on the screen right there, you'll be able to see it. His Twitter handle, make sure you follow him there. Lots and lots of draft talk coming up the rest of this month. It's good to see you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Good to see you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, that was fun. Always is. As I've said before, the first step in solving a problem or dealing with a problem is admitting you have one, right? I am addicted to mock drafts. I assure you that not too long after I finish editing this episode and getting it uploaded, I'll probably be right back doing mock drafts again, running through different scenarios and watching some scouting tape. Because we're getting closer. Man, this is going to be a kind of a landmark draft for this new coaching staff. And first time without Pete Carroll being in the building in 15 years. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different. And that makes for some sweaty palms for some of you, but also some excitement, I think, as well. Follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. Don't forget to subscribe and like and do all the things at all the different places. Until next time, forever and always, go Hawks.